look at what's going on in the world with the currencies, the markets, the money printing, the economies. It's only a matter of time before something terrible happens, like in 2008 when we ran out of gold and silver. And if we run out, the time to protect yourself from inflation is going to be gone. So do due diligence now.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome everyone. We're here with Andy Hoffman, the media director from MilesFranklin.com. Today's topic is how to buy and store and hold gold and silver, precious metals, real money. There's several folks who have talked to us about their interest in starting to hold real money, gold and silver. They've heard about it on the news, they've heard different people talking about it, but it seems unfamiliar to them. They have no idea how or where to get started, who to trust. And so I just wanted to guide us through just a few real basic questions around that to increase your comfort level, confidence that you can get started at this, so that you can start diversifying some of your wealth, or protect some of your wealth from fiat currencies, from the risks that are inherent in that. So Andy, can you tell us just for a couple minutes about yourself and why you might be someone who could speak to those topics that we just described?
Sure. Well, I spent 15 years working on Wall Street. I was an analyst and a trader. I'm a chartered financial analyst. But I left Wall Street because I couldn't take the corruption back in 2005. And also on a personal basis, I had kind of gone all into the precious metal sector back in 2002 when I realized that the dollar and all fiat currencies, their days were numbered as all prior fiat currencies, had to have been. And in time, I've become a major global commentator on the topic. And 3 years ago, I joined Miles Franklin, one of the largest bullion dealers in the States, where I write a free blog every day, and I market the concept of precious metals ownership.
One of the first questions that I've been asked is why? And if you could, we only want to spend maybe 5 minutes on that, but why are gold and silver a means of protection?
Well, gold and silver are real money. Exactly the way you started out this conversation was talking about fiat currency. Fiat currency means currency that's unbacked by anything. There have been 599 fiat currencies through history, and with the exception of countries that were conquered, every single one has failed, and it's because it's simple. It is a Ponzi scheme. Once you start printing money, the only way to maintain it, the system, is to keep printing it until eventually it collapses of its own weight. This is now since 1971, when the Bretton Woods standard, which had a semi-gold backing to currencies, when that was reneged on by Richard Nixon when he completely abandoned the gold standard. Since 1971, it's been the first time in history where not a single currency in the world has been backed by anything. And as a consequence, that's why you've seen this massive increase in debt around the world, leading up to initially the 2000 crisis, then 2008 crisis, and where we are today, where most of the world's currencies are falling to all-time lows, which is causing real inflation and in some cases massive social unrest in places as diverse as Asia, South America, and even parts of Europe. So ultimately, the system is only going to get worse. You're going to see more money printing until eventually all the currencies are gone and we have to start over again. Gold and silver have been the only substances that have held their value. They have all the properties of money. That they're not only a medium of exchange, but a store of value. And they've done this for thousands of years, and there's no reason to believe that they will be any different this time around. In fact, this time around, because of all this global damage, you probably will never see a rush into physical gold and silver like we've seen in the past. And as a matter of fact, despite the paper price being manipulated down last year, we've seen all-time record-high physical demand around the world in 2013, which, by the way, has started 2014 with a bang, because we had record demand in China last year, which was 2 times the year before, and already January 2014, they're about to have their biggest ever demand month.
So what are the simplest ways for an individual who wants to make their very first purchase of gold or silver to do that?
It's really very simple. The propaganda makes it seem like it's so difficult, but really, I mean, you can buy it from us. Just give us a call, and you give us, send a check by phone or wire, and we send it right to you. If you want to be in business, you can go on eBay and check out the people with high ratings. Although I would warn you about anything on eBay. The fact is, it's very easy. You can even walk into your coin shop and buy a coin or two. But I really advise just getting something in your hand, because once you realize how heavy these things are and the history behind them, you'll realize, especially if you're holding like a quarter or a dime, which is worthless, in your other hand, just why they're valuable.
Can you give us a little bit of indication on when people want to do this privately, want to retain their privacy when purchasing metals? Is there something about reporting limits or the type of metals that they would purchase that would help them to retain their privacy?
No, as of now, there are no reporting limits for us. We don't have to tell the government that people bought stuff, and you don't, as the buyer, have to tell them. There are minor reporting limits for certain sales of certain products in certain amounts, but for the most part, there's very little, if any, reporting requirements. And again, 99% of our sales are people who are not selling them. They're not buying them to trade them. They're buying them for long-term wealth preservation. So it really doesn't come into play. I mean, so yes, we do have records, but there's no law that says that anyone has to report what they bought. So it right now is a very anonymous thing to do. What we're concerned about is if when gold and silver really take off and people are confused, that the government will take actions to make it less private, which is why you need to do it now while this window of opportunity is still there.
In terms of ways of owning gold and silver, there's at least two that come to mind. One is just a personal collection. The other is a precious metals IRA. Can you touch just briefly on both of those?
Well, yes, there are ways of owning precious metals within IRAs, and we can guide you to all different kinds. There are kinds where there's a custodian that will hold it for you. There are kinds where you can actually hold it yourself, although it's still tax-wise, it's within the IRA. Personally, I don't recommend anyone hold anything in an IRA. I cashed all mine out 4 years ago because I believe the government's going to eventually, if not confiscate them, then raise the taxes so high that it won't be worth holding them. And, when you see Obama announce his MIRA plan last week, to me, that's just the starting point of creating a system for confiscating IRAs. But yes, we can certainly get for the people who want to hold on to IRAs into ways of doing that. But what I would advise for everyone, and what I do personally, is you hold it outside of the system, and you can either hold it at your home, or we have a great storage facility. Actually, we have multiple options for storage. It really depends on your personal situation.
Well, why don't we walk through, just so people can picture it, maybe 3 or 4 different options on how they might hold gold or silver in a personal collection outside the system, touching on things like what is secure vault storage, what's the difference between segregated versus commingled storage, bank deposit box, home safe, other options that they might think about. Just if you could lay out 3 or 4 options for people to think about.
Well, I would say probably 99% of the owners of some sort of gold and silver throughout the world hold it on their own possession. That is either in their house or at some place they know of personally. Of course, 1% of the owners hold it in storage, but then again, that probably accounts for 70 or 80% of the actual gold, because that 1% is the governments and institutions that own large amounts. There are very few people where holding it in storage, individuals, not institutions, makes sense. I'm one of them, for instance, because I'm a high-profile owner. I write every day about owning gold and silver. The same would go for someone who had, let's say, a lot, or they didn't feel protecting in their home, or they're a renter or an expatriate or a high-profile person, as I said. So they believe that they're going to be moving a lot and they don't want to have to move it around. So there are reasons why an individual might want to put it in storage. Otherwise, I'd say just get a safe in your house, hide it in the basement, don't tell people about it, get an alarm, a dog, a gun, you name it. But as for storage options, we at Miles Franklin have options all over the world, from the United States to Canada, Switzerland, Hong Kong, Singapore, you name it. Now, I would first and foremost tell people, do not put anything in the United States institution. We use the depository in Fargo, North Dakota, which is fine, but we believe that the U.S. government is very dangerous when it comes to these things, and the last thing you want is to be have an X on your gold, saying, look, I'm in a big depository here in the States. What I use personally is Miles Franklin's program with Brinks Canada. I've been there and I've seen it several times. It's segregated, as you say, which means it's your gold. It's not just in a pool of gold where you own a piece of it. When we go, and I've gone several times, I have a lockbox with my gold in it, and I recognize the gold that I sent up there, and it's audited as such. That's segregated as opposed to unsegregated. And the same goes for allocated versus unallocated. Allocated means it's allocated to you. Unallocated means it's in a pool, and therefore if you ever needed to get it back, it would have to come from a pool of gold that's owned by a lot of people, and there's a lot of fears that some of those pools are over-owned, just like the paper gold market has more claims on the physical gold underneath it than there is actual gold. And again, the other programs we offer are not our personal programs. The one we have at Brinks in Montreal, our officers go several times a year to audit it, as well as a third-party auditor. Our other program, and we charge by the ounce, not by the percent bullion value. So, like if the price of gold doubles, your storage fees are going to stay the same. Just about everyone else is going to charge percent of bullion value, which means if gold doubles, your fee doubles, etc. And the other programs we have in Switzerland and Singapore and Hong Kong, it's a very reputable company, but it's not our program. We would just refer you to it.
So, still to a beginner, a lot of this sounds fairly exotic. It sounds fairly complex. We start talking about, international foreign countries all over the world and different ways. If you could just repeat one more time what you think would be the simplest step that a first-timer could do who wants to be able to say that to realize that for their family, not all of their wealth is vulnerable to the whims of the market or of government, but they want to really have something that they can hold in their hand that has solid, time-proven value. What's a initial first step that they can do?
It's very simple. When it comes to gold, there's only a handful of products. You have your gold eagles from the U.S. Mint, your gold maples from the Canadian Mint. There's really not that many choices. Silver, there are more choices, but we're still going to probably recommend that you start out with some of the more liquid names that are well known, like the Silver Eagle and the Silver Maple Leaf. And also for silver, you might want to get some what's called junk silver, which means old pre-1966 dimes, quarters, and half dollars, which were 90% silver. Just in case, for the worst case scenario or barter, you might want to get a little bag of that. But really, you just buy a few of those coins, keep them at home in a safe, and just start to understand and do your research about what they mean. And as you get more comfortable with the concept, you can add to your position. And if you need to store it overseas, we can, or in the States, we can, let you know what the various options are.
Two really quick follow-up questions. One is, another question people ask is, how do they know they're getting a fair price? That should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's a commodity market. You can go all over the internet. You can check out prices at us and all of our competitors, and you'll see they're pretty much going to be about the same everywhere, including your coin dealer. Your coin dealer, there'll be a slightly higher premium because they don't sell in bulk. They sell single pieces, so you'll pay a little more. But for the most part, it's an extremely commodity business across the board, and no, counterfeiting is not an issue, especially if you are dealing with the 1 ounce and below denominations that we recommend.
All right. Well, I think that's what we have time for today. Andy, do you have any further words of wisdom before we sign off?
Only that people need to do their due diligence now. The fact that they're listening to this podcast is a start. But, look at what's going on in the world with the currencies, the markets, the money printing, the economies. It's only a matter of time before something terrible happens, like in 2008, when we ran out of gold and silver. And if we run out, the time to protect yourself from inflation is going to be gone. So do due diligence now.
Second question I remembered, I had forgotten earlier, was should people worry about timing their purchases based on the current price of silver? What might happen next month? What did happen last month? You mentioned just a minute ago as far as you can always add to your collection. How do those two work together?
To me, gold and silver are not investments. They are money. They are your savings. It's the way you used to think about money in the bank. And the goal is to get as many ounces as possible before the system goes down. The prices have been so suppressed for so long to protect the system that, frankly, they're both, and I wrote about it today, they're both trading below the cost of production. So you have that kind of floor on it to start with. But either way, the prices are going to eventually be many multiples higher than they are now. And the question is going to be, can you get ounces, not what price can you get them? So as far as I'm concerned, I add to my holdings whenever I have cash to do so. And I would not recommend anyone take an investment portfolio approach because, again, these are not investments. This is your savings.
Thank you very much, Andy, for your time today. I'm sure we'll have some follow-up questions for another visit, but I appreciate you sharing wisdom and information with our viewers and look forward to hearing from you again.
Very well.